Sometimes you just have to go with your gut. So we're supposed to be in Atlanta, in Miami. And we decide, let's go to Detroit. So that's what we do, Detroit. Now, Detroit is, well, an interesting city. Motown. You're known for your music. Your fantastic music. Sports. It seems like in Detroit, you can either do sports or music, art or dance, acting or singing. I mean, it seems so versatile. You can do just about anything. I think that's the way it's always been in Detroit. Going back to the beginning. You know, the indigenous, in order to survive in Detroit, before the French colonization, you would have to know so much about navigation. You're navigating the lakes to catch your prey. You're hunting. You'd have to know so much about crafting a spear, making nets. So much went into it. So that's being passed down, that knowledge, throughout generations in Detroit. They've always been innovators in Michigan. At the turn of the last century, you had the Model T, Henry Ford, the automobile. That was groundbreaking. It was genius. It was legendary. It was Detroit. You've had Motown. You had jazz and blues. You gave us Stevie Wonder. You gave us Serena Williams, Jamil Hill. The list of star basketball players is too long. Great musical acts. The Isley Brothers, the Temptations, Aretha Franklin, the Marvelettes. You gave us labor. Now, they like to say that us socialists, we don't like labor. That's the most nonsensical thing anybody could ever say. Why wouldn't we like labor? The workers. Who's always advocating for workers to get paid what they're actually worth? Eugene Debs, during this same time period in the early 1900s, was a leading proponent for workers' rights, for unions, for fair wages, for integration. Eugene Debs. They're telling you a story that's not true. And you know who it is. It's the conservatives. corporatists, the capitalists. They always want to demonize socialists. But it's the socialists' fault for labor to have unions. That's a fact in this country. You know what else every Michigander has in common? Whether you're a Wolverine or a Spartan, you're super impressive with what you can do. Nobody else can do this. I'm in Detroit. Nobody else can do that. Detroit, you're special. You're underdogs. You're discounted. We talked about the French colonizing originally, the original settlement. Then you had the British that colonized it away from the French. And now you have the Americans. In Detroit, you have a tale of two cities. And this didn't just happen in Detroit. It's kind of happened a long time ago. You see, back in the early 1920s, a lot of African Americans started migrating to Detroit. Why? Well, they were fleeing the racist bullshit of the South. The lynchings, Jim Crow, bigotry, segregation. You know, everybody wants to talk about Martin Luther King Jr. and how he was a great civil rights leader. Do they ever tell you what civil rights actually means, though? The definition of the word civil rights. It means rights to be treated humanely. If you're fighting for civil rights, that means that you're not being treated humanely. So bear that in mind when you hear about the Great Migration and how 100,000 African Americans in a short period of time flocked from the South to Detroit, the Midwest, partially for jobs. A lot of the soldiers, the African American soldiers after World War II, they went to Detroit so they could get jobs working in the automobile industry. But there wasn't enough housing. There was a housing crisis. And if African Americans moved into white neighborhoods, it would drive down the property values. So white neighborhoods made sure that African Americans couldn't live in their neighborhoods. The North had segregation too. Detroit has segregation. In the law, the letter of the law. When the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do this, they continued. They created covenants and said that the government, under the 14th Amendment, had no right to tell a person what they can do from person to person with a deed in a covenant. The Supreme Court in 1948 struck that down. But then you had a bunch of real estate agents and developers come up with block busting, where they would have African American children go to neighborhoods, affluent white neighborhoods, and tell them, you should sell your house. You know what's coming next. And the white community, they would sell their homes beneath the home value. And then the real estate agents would sell it to an African American family, vastly more than what it was worth. This was called block busting. So you got segregation and block busting. And then the city went a step further and did redlining. They put in highways and freeways with limited access, destination, all throughout the urban city area. All of those things decimated the African American community in Detroit. And this remained the policy up until 1980. And then people want to act like they don't know why there's poverty in Detroit. There's 5 Grosse Pointe communities surrounding Wayne County. They're 5 of the most affluent areas in all of supposedly Detroit or Wayne County. But get this, they're not Wayne County. They're their own independent communities. You have Grosse Pointe, Grosse Pointe Shores, Grosse Pointe Park, Grosse Pointe Rock, Grosse Pointe Farms, Grosse Pointe Shores, all kinds of Grosse Pointes. You got 5 of them. They all are annexed from Detroit because of property taxes. They don't want to pay higher property taxes. Now that's fine. But basically what that means is the Detroit school system, they get no money. So everybody loves talking about how Detroit public schools are crumbling and dilapidating. Of course, they get no money to fix them, to repair them. All the money that could potentially go to those schools go to Grosse Pointe schools, magnet schools, academies, charters that are not public schools. But basically, they're these schools that are special schools. So you drain all the money out of the city. You come up with special schools in suburban areas. You don't fund the schools in the city. Only the suburban schools get funded because funding is done by zip code. And then people want to complain about the public education and the school buildings and how they look. Martin Luther King said this in 1967 in Grosse Pointe. That Detroit, like many cities, is a tale of 2 cities. Schizophrenic, where you have wealth in one area and blight and decay in the other. That was right before he was assassinated. Martin Luther King said that in Grosse Pointe, Michigan. Has anything changed in 2022? Well, the suburbs are still mostly white and affluent. The inner city is still blighted, decayed, vacant buildings. Downtown is bustling. Oh, there's so much innovation downtown. But the vast majority of the workers who work in downtown, 71% of the workers who work in downtown Detroit, don't actually live in Detroit. They live in the suburbs. I don't know why people say that segregation went away when it really did. We've chosen to have segregation inside cities, inside suburban communities. As Americans, we've chosen this. You have to ask yourself, is it good now to look in hindsight at certain communities that are just decimated in this country, and then look at other communities that are doing well? We call that racial inequality, or wealth inequality, if you're talking on a global scale. The wealth inequality is so high now in America that nobody, it used to be the conservatives would dispute that. Oh no, CEOs, they're struggling. No, now they don't say that. Now they don't want to include wealthy people in the stimulus. But they keep wanting to give them tax cuts though. No, nobody disputes it anymore. But nobody has any kind of solutions to solve it. Detroit, we know. We know. The only way to repair this nation is reparations. It's not about blaming or shaming. It's about doing what's going to help repair this nation. Recently, it was announced that Detroit will be getting the first electric vehicle charging stations, roads. So you're going to be able to charge your car as you're driving. Detroit was selected for that. Those are jobs that are coming back to Detroit. Detroit, it needs to be rebuilt. You just can't have a downtown area and the rest of the city blighted. You gotta rebuild the whole city. You gotta make it a place people want to go. People want to do things in Detroit. The entire Detroit. Now's the time to do it. Now's the time to, well, really envision it and put it to practice. It was reported during COVID that China, the country, set up 100 fully functioning hospitals in under 30 days. Did you hear what I just said? The country of China set up 100 fully functioning hospitals in under 30 days. Detroit has been blighted for decades. Flint has had bad drinking water for decades. We gotta be able to move faster. We gotta be able to build. I remember Bob the Builder. They said, Bob the Builder, can he fix it? Yes, he can. The people of Detroit can fix Detroit. They just gotta be given the resources to do so. John Conyers, may he rest in peace, was the sponsor of H.R. 40 since the 1980s, demanding the United States government pay reparations to the African American community. Nobody gets more Michigan, Detroit, than the Honorable late Congressman John Conyers. John Conyers knew back then, well before anybody in the nation was talking about this, that it was needed. You know why? Because Martin Luther King Jr. went to Grosse Pointe and pretty much said that in the 60s. Detroit, you've always known it. You've been visionary. You gave us the Model T. The indigenous shaped their spears. Spears that no other tribes had ever seen before when they came. You gave us boxing, John Lewis. You gave us pizza, Little Caesars, that would become Joe Louis Arena. A scrappy immigrant family. You are some of the best people in this country. Detroit. We gotta close this deal out, Detroit. And I think we will. You know, Detroit, that this is not about shaming or blaming anybody. This is about a win for the country. If Detroit wins and comes back, America wins and comes back. No other city signifies coming back like Detroit. If Detroit wins, America wins. And it can't be part of Detroit winning. It has to be the whole city winning. We have to start thinking about if an American is winning and doing well, it's a victory for our country. Detroit, if it can come back, it's a victory for the country. The only way Detroit comes back is reparations. And it has to be done now. You can't wait. Everybody knows this. Yet nobody's acting with urgency, with vigor, with passion. Detroit, you took a hit in 2020. You had a lunatic as president. He made some startling allegations against you, the citizens. He went and tried to disenfranchise you again and tell you you're not a citizen. You're not an American. Wayne County overwhelmingly voted against Donald Trump. Detroit overwhelmingly voted against Donald Trump in the 2020 elections. And yet, he tried to have the military, the National Guard, seize your voting machines. Just take the right from you to vote. Two cities, two countries, two systems. We see it in everything. Detroit, you saw it up close and personal between the crack and the powder. Crack cocaine, powder cocaine, the sentencing. African Americans preferred crack cocaine. White Americans preferred powder cocaine. They sentenced African Americans to a higher jail sentence for preferring crack instead of powder. Same drug, different sentencing. Detroit, you were home to this shit. You saw it up close and personal. That's why John Conyers was for reparations. And they knew it. Detroit, you saw them put freeways and highways with limited pass access all throughout your urban city to destabilize and create blight and decay in African American communities. You saw them draw up maps where they wouldn't loan any African Americans money to purchase homes in suburban neighborhoods. You saw that up close and personal. You saw blockbusting, where they would send little children, African American children, into white communities with pamphlets and knock on their door and tell them, you know what's coming next. And then those white people would flee to the suburbs. Also, the real estate and the developers could upcharge and sell that same property to an African American. You had that go on into the 1980s. John Conyers was dead. He knew about that. That's why he supported reparations. Detroit, if you bounce back, we all bounce back. You can set the trend, Detroit. You can be the first city to say, we're going to do reparations for our African American residents and citizens in this city. You can be the first. You had great boxers, great athletes, great musicians, great visionaries. Now do you have great politicians, courageous politicians? And you have courageous activists, courageous community leaders that can do the right thing. The thing John Conyers was trying to do. You have a great congresswoman representing you in Detroit, Rashida Tlaib. She's a fighter. I recommend that she sue the United States government for disenfranchisement of all Detroit residents. The United States government had drafted executive orders to seize the voting machines in black communities simply because they weren't voting for Donald Trump. That's disenfranchisement 101. Detroit, file a class action lawsuit against the Trump family, Rudy Giuliani, Michael Flynn, all the individuals behind those what I would consider to be domestic terrorists. You had one Detroit election worker. She couldn't go outside her home. Every day she would get calls with bomb threats. You had people go to the TCF arena and bang on the windows, trying to barge into the arena. They literally had to lock the arena door and put things up against the door, block out the windows because they were trying to break the windows. He sent a mob of people who didn't live in Detroit into the TCF arena area to terrorize the African American community. That's disenfranchisement. That's emotional distress. Sue all of them. Please, Rashida Tlaib, please sue the Trump family on behalf of Michigan and Detroit. They tried to disenfranchise you. Maybe you can get some monetary compensation from that too. Detroit, it's time to do big things. This is going to be a big thing, Detroit. But I think you can do it. Nobody thought that the horse and buggy wasn't needed. Everybody scoffed and laughed when Henry Ford created the Model T. Who would drive a car? There were no roads. But Henry Ford was a visionary. He gave people an opportunity to work. They would have never had an opportunity to work. Because he was a visionary. Detroit, you gotta be visionary again. You gotta think. If a lot of Americans now have more money to spend, they never had it before. They're going to build and manufacture. It's going to be a boom for the city. The whole city. Which is going to be a boom for the whole state. Which is going to be a boom for the whole country. Detroit, you're about going forward. Let's do this.